Hi, everybody. I'm Kay Helm, and this is the Your Voice podcast. Find your voice, tell your story, change the world. Each week, I interview someone about the way in which they live or tell their story, and I hope you find each episode not only inspiring, but also helpful in a practical way. This week, my guest is Melissa Thomas. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Hi, Kay. Thanks so much for having me on today, and congratulations for launching your podcast.
Oh, thank you so much.
It's exciting.
Yeah, it is. It's the new thing in the schedule as well.
Right.
So, but you do, and that's kind of what we're talking about today, is you make changes in your life to pursue your dream, and I've got a lot of things I want to do, and I see the podcast as an avenue for that, and one of the things I like to do is help people, so I know you made changes in your life so you could pursue a dream.
I did, yeah. And for those of you that don't know me, I commonly go by Melissa the Coach. That's in the business world. That's how people know me.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon for me to be walking around my town and somebody go, "Hey, Coach, how's it going?" That sort of thing. So it's it's funny because in all of my years of growing up, being an entrepreneur and owning my own company was never on any sort of bucket list that I ever wrote out. It just was one of those things of following, just following one step kind of led into another. But it all started way back in the day when I was 19 years old, and I went to my very first Elton John concert. And I had been a fan of Elton John, a couple years prior to that. I sort of discovered him when I was probably in like maybe 7th, 8th, 9th grade, somewhere around there, perusing through my dad's cassette tapes. And you and I know what cassette tapes are.
Yeah.
So maybe younger audience might not know what a cassette tape is, but it was way back before iTunes and CDs and everything else.
Yes.
And just came across the Goodbye Yellow Brick Road album and popped it into my boombox and just immediately fell in love with the music. And when I was 19, I went to my first concert, and I decided that my dream was going to be to meet Elton John in person, which, at the time seemed like this crazy, audacious goal, because my family has zero connections to the music industry. I didn't even know how you might go about meeting someone as famous as Elton John, but I did know that I had to go to the concerts. And I love everything about the entire concert experience. So it wasn't like, oh, I have to go to another concert to try to meet Elton John. Like I was excited about going to the concerts. And so when I was in college, I pursued a degree in teaching. Mm-hmm. And because my passion was in teaching, knowing that, in hindsight, and sometimes when I tell this story, I tell people, when I was already in college when I decided I wanted to meet Elton John. And so I, of course, chose the profession that would make me the most amount of money to pursue this dream.
You're right.
Which proves the point that I follow my heart more so than I follow common sense or what's going on in my head. So, but at any rate, I've spent my entire adult life going to Elton John concerts, trying to pursue this dream of meeting Elton John. And in 2007, so kind of flash forward that many years, my friend called and told me that Elton John was doing a concert at Madison Square Garden. And it was his 60th birthday concert and also his 60th concert that he had done at Madison Square Garden. So that is what's known as a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Right.
And she said, "I'm going and let's go together." And now this is a friend of mine that I had met at previous concerts, and we had traveled together to concerts before. So it wasn't that unusual that one of us would call each other and say, "Hey, let's go to this concert together." And I couldn't go because I didn't have the money. Mm-hmm. And the reason I didn't have the money was because I had spent my life up until then not managing my money well. And again, hindsight is the best teacher, right? Because I can look back at my life and go, oh, if I had not maybe chosen a different profession, but if I had not been so bent on living on my own while also, graduating from college with $30,000 of student loan debt, in my first year teaching, I made $19,500. I was already in the hole,
Right.
But I had my friends, Visa, MasterCard, and Discover to help me out when times got tough, and it just sort of snowballed into that. And so when when I met my husband, he was active duty in the Marine Corps. So we have a joke that neither one of us married for money, right? So, because, people who are active duty in the military don't make a whole lot of money either. And there was just a series of events that led to having that moment where I said, I can't believe I'm in this position where I can't go to the concert because I don't have money. And I don't even have the money on a credit card to go into debt to be able to go to this concert. And so that was really the first time I had to kind of take a step back and assess my financial situation and say, what can we do differently? Because money is the thing that is standing in the way of pursuing my dream. Now, would I have met Elton at that concert? Probably not, right? But the point is that as much as I pursue my dream to meet Elton John, I also love going to the concerts, and that was that I couldn't go to. And so I did like most people do. I earned more money. I started in direct sales. I was a stay-at-home mom at the time, and it didn't make sense for me to go out and work outside the home and have to pay for daycare. So I got into direct sales, and I did very well in direct sales, and I made money in direct sales. And the problem is, if you can't manage $500, you can't manage $1,200 or $1,300 or whatever, however much extra money I was bringing in every month. So even though I made more money, I never learned the skills on how to manage it better. And all we did was increase our lifestyle because we had more money coming in.
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot of people do that. I mean, and nobody sets off to end up in debt that, where you get on down the road and all of a sudden you have that moment.
Right.
Where I can't do something, and it might be I can't go to the concert, I can't take the vacation with family, I can't get something that my kid needs, or maybe you can't buy groceries or pay the mortgage, and you get in trouble really fast. Before you know it, it sneaks up on you. So what did you do about that?
Well, then I had to have a second financial rock bottom moment in order to make a change, because even though I was bringing in more money, again, we never fixed the budget. We never really learned to budget well. We never made any dramatic changes in the way we handled money. And, we all know that in order for something to change, you have to do something drastically different. You can't keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, right?
Right.
So, but that's sort of what we were doing, except that we were making more money. And so we thought that was the change that was needed, was that, well, if we don't have enough money, we'll just go make more money. And in theory, that works if you know how to manage the extra income that you have coming in, and you don't just say, oh, I'm going to make an extra $800. Let's go out to dinner. Let's go, whatever. Like, that's not, we have to have a plan, for the extra income. Right. So in 2009, our boys were 5 and 4 at the time. And I was one of those people that flipped open the calendar to December and went, oh, Christmas is this month. I got to do something about Christmas. Yeah. And so I was sitting at the computer, and I had my credit cards out in front of me, and I don't remember now, but probably 3 or 4 of them. And I was going, my plan was to put $30 on one and $40 on another and so on, because they were all almost maxed out. So I couldn't max out one on Christmas, because I always like to keep that cushion, even though, and by maxed out, I'm talking thousands of dollars. It wasn't like a $500 limit credit card or whatever. And I just really had this moment where I was shopping online, and I heard this voice in my head go, "You're doing it wrong." And my immediate reaction was, no, I'm not. I've shopped online dozens of times before. I know exactly what I'm doing. I don't even know where that's coming from. And no sooner did I have that thought where I went, oh, wrong. Like, oh, that's not that voice. That's like the voice of God, like telling me, like, this is not the way you're supposed to be doing things. Because as a Christian, it bothered me that I was so concerned about providing the, traditional presents under the tree for Christmas morning for the boys than I was about making sure they understood the true meaning of the holiday. And I never, that's really the only time in my life where I can very clearly say I know that was God's voice in my head going, hey, it's like, and I was just like, I don't know. What do you want me to do? Like, I can't cancel Christmas. Like, who cancels Christmas? Nobody does that,
Yeah.
And so but I remember sitting there going, okay, so how about I go ahead and get the presents, and then I'll just not be in the same position next year. And of course, like, I don't get any answer, I just get this like, radio silence, whatever.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I thought, I really do need to do things differently. I need to not be in the same situation next year where we literally do not have the money to pay for Christmas presents. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous, And so a few months earlier, my friend had introduced me to Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University course. She and her husband were taking it at her church, and it became, and she knows this story. So I love telling this story because it became to where the very first time she came to me and she said, we're taking this class at our church and we're learning how to manage our money and we're getting out of debt and we're getting on a budget. And she was super excited about it. I thought she had lost her mind, because it's like, who gets excited about doing budgets and who gets excited about getting out of debt? Like, nobody does that. And I had never heard of Dave Ramsey. So I thought she had totally just gotten into some kind of brainwashing Bible study or whatever. Like, I didn't even know what to think at that time. But it got to the point where every time I saw her, all she talked about was how excited she was that she and her husband were getting out of debt. And I was excited for her, but I wasn't ready to listen to all that. So I got to the point where when I would see her out in public, like, I would turn and walk the other way. Like, so I didn't have to listen to her, And so, but here I am now, in December, putting all this stuff together. And at the time, so this was in 2009. And at that time, Susie Orman was very popular on the radio and TV, and David Bach was very popular on radio and TV. And so I went to the library and I got all their books and I read all their books. And as a former teacher, I thought, all I have to do is like create a lesson plan, like a financial lesson plan, and take all of this advice from all these money people. And I just need to follow that advice, because that was a lesson I learned in my direct sales job, was that if you wanted to be the big money earner, all you had to do was pick somebody who was doing that and follow the exact steps that they did in order to get there. So I took that knowledge and my knowledge as a teacher and I put everything together. And there were parts of, if I read something and went, oh no, I'm not doing that, then I didn't put it in the plan. Like, I didn't really challenge myself. I didn't really, it was just, I was trying to make it easy and try to get the easy way out. And in managing money, there is no easy way out. You've got to do the work and you've got to do the things that are uncomfortable in order to create the changes. And so as I'm creating this plan, I had this thought that, once I get this plan and once I get going and I talk to people about it, that my friend would find out what I'm doing and she might ask me, like, what part of Dave Ramsey's plan are you doing? And so I thought, well, I should put something from Dave Ramsey in my plan. So if she asks me, I can say, well, I'm doing this part of his plan. So I went to daveramsey.com, and as soon as the homepage to the website opened, I had this feeling that was exactly what I was supposed to be doing. And I don't know how else to describe it other than, like, when I met my husband, I knew he was the one I was supposed to get married to. It's kind of one of those things where I can't really put words to it, but I just knew that was the plan. So on December 31st, I took $99 off the top of that paycheck and I bought the home study course of Financial Peace University and followed it to a T. I did exactly everything that he said to do. And it wasn't until we started that program that we found out that we were over $43,000 in debt. And that's crushing, like, to know, but because it's one thing to know you have debt. It's another thing to look at the number on the paper staring back at you.
Right.
And then going, how in the world are we going to get out of debt? And just trying to figure out what the next step is going to be.
Yeah. And when people get into that kind of overwhelming space where they finally see the issue, then there's that, like you say, the what do we do now moment. And then, as you were saying earlier, you have this dream and those dreams are kind of somewhere down the line in the land of foggy,
Right.
wishes and some days.
Right, right.
What was the next thing you did? How did you get to the part where you were then free of all that?
Well, we followed the Dave Ramsey baby steps, and we did. Now by this time, I was out of the direct sales industry because I had left that in probably about 2008. I only did that for about two years, I think. So I was just a stay-at-home mom, and I say just a stay-at-home mom because at this point I didn't have my company, I didn't have any income coming in. I mean, that's all I was doing at the time. So, and again, we had the conversation about whether it made sense for me to go work outside the home or not. We ultimately decided that it did not. But the whole creating a budget that worked for us, following the budget, couponing, trying different ways to save money, immersing myself in all things Dave Ramsey. Like I listened to him on the radio, I read his books, I did everything I could to just learn. I mean, I became a student of how to manage money better. That's pretty much how I spent my days while the boys were in preschool at that time. And I just learned to do things differently, even though it was hard and even though it was a pain. And even though there were days it was like, I know we cut ice cream out of the grocery budget, but I could really go for some ice cream right now, and stuff, just little things like that, and because when you're trying to get out of debt, you have to find the money. You either have to make more income or you have to decrease expenses in order to find the money to start throwing at the debt. And the grocery budget, the grocery line item is one of the easiest ways that you can cut back on expenses and then also save money through couponing and whatnot. So I really just immersed myself in that whole world of learning how to coupon and doing all those things. And I started teaching coupon workshops. And in the coupon workshops, because I would go to our local store and save all this money and post on Facebook, I got $100 worth of groceries for $19.99 or so, whatever it was. Yeah. And my friends would be like, how did you do that? And I'd say, well, let's put a workshop together because my heart is in the teaching, right? And so I said, let's put a workshop together and get some friends together and I'll teach you how to do couponing. And in the coupon workshops, I would talk to people about creating a budget. And I would say to them, for example, your grocery line item might be $500 a month. If you coupon, you could bring it down to $400 a month. Now you have a surplus of $100 a month that you can put towards your budget. Like that's how it works. And people would say to me, I don't know what you mean about a budget. What do you mean? What are you talking about? And of course I would go, what do you mean you're not budgeting? Because at this point I was totally immersed in doing the budget. And when we started, my husband got paid twice a month, so I did the budget twice a month because that's what I did every paycheck when we first started out. And so I would just start teaching people how to do a basic budget and how to follow a budget. And that's what eventually led me to creating my company, Melissa the Coach, as a personal finance coach. And I actually started the business about a year before we got out of debt because I knew by the time I started my business, I knew we had a debt-free date, which was my 40th birthday. So we ended up paying off $43,544 of consumer debt, which was 2 vehicles, 6 credit cards, and my student loan. And we paid that off in 3 years, 8 months, and 27 days. So
great. Yeah.
we just knuckled down and we just got it done, and we have not look back since. The only debt we have left is our mortgage.
And that's great. And I know a lot of people would love to be, in that place. But like you were saying earlier, even earning money, we think, well, if I just earn more money, but if you're still spending more than what you're bringing in,
right,
you continue to go into debt. You're going deeper into a deeper hole. You found like a side hustle, which is now a big thing for you now. And just in doing what you were doing, right? Because you found other people that were really in the same boat, but it was kind of nobody was talking about it until you started talking about it.
Pretty much, yeah, because, talking about money is so taboo,
Yeah.
like people don't, especially if you're bad with money, you don't talk about that, and
Yeah.
so, if you're good with money, sometimes people don't have a problem talking about that and how successful they are and all that. But just by sharing my story and having other people contact me and say, you know what, I'm like that too, and I want you to help me. And 100% when my clients come to me and I ask them, like, why did you come to me? Like, why did you reach out to me for help? And they say, because you're debt free and I want that too. And a lot of my clients have watched me from the time that I started getting out of debt until, or they've gone to the website and they've read the story or whatever. And they go, oh, wow. Like, and my business is built on, I've been there, done that. And if I can do it, you can do it, and I can help you,
Right.
and that's why people come to me. And so it's been, so this year is year 6 of my business. So it turns out that, there are people out there that need help managing money. And the number one thing I do, well, 2 things actually, but the number one thing I do is remove the emotion from the budgeting process.
That's
People
big.
will come to me with their budget, and when I look at it, it's just numbers on paper.
Mm-hmm.
And I can ask them, I don't mind asking them the hard questions, like, why do you have $500 for eating out and then you have another $500 for groceries? Like, why is eating out important to you? And my job is not to tell people, my job is not to go through somebody's budget with a big red marker and go, you're not doing this anymore. You're not doing this anymore. You're not doing this anymore. My job is to find out what their goals are and then help them see within their budget the things that they can do in order to reach their goals. And what I always tell people is, obviously, the more you cut out of your budget, the faster you're going to get out of debt. But
Right.
I also want people to have a life while they're also getting out of debt. So there's a little bit of a balance there, because one thing I was not willing to give up while we were getting out of debt was going to see Elton John.
Mm-hmm.
And so the only difference, though, was that I cash flowed each one of those trips. I think I went to 5 Elton John concerts in the almost 4 years it took us to get out of debt. But I cash flowed each trip. And I just, once I knew a date that I was going, I became more obsessed with, how can I get the money to be able to go, to buy the ticket? A lot of times I slept on someone's couch. A lot of times I split a hotel room with somebody. It was just,
Mm-hmm.
it was just the matter of, I want to go and how am I going to get there? And I would go, if we were going out to dinner before the concert, I was having a glass of water and like a side salad, like,
Mm-hmm.
like the least amount of money that I could spend, to be able to go, because it was more important to me to buy a ticket to the concert than it was to eat a full meal, before the show. So.
Yeah, that's actually the little tricks like that, like getting water at a restaurant instead of getting any kind of drink.
Right.
That's actually a huge budgeting tip.
It
Yeah,
is. Yes, it
that's a
is.
great money
Yeah.
saver right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like I tell people, because I have clients all the time that they're like, well, we like to go out to dinner, like on a Friday night or Saturday night. We like to go out to our friends. We like to, and I'm not telling you that you can't do that anymore. What I'm saying is, when you go out, how about getting one drink and nursing it for the entire night that you're out,
Mm-hmm.
instead of getting 2 or 3 or 4 drinks, or eat at home before you go out and hang out with your friends and maybe just get some appetizers or something while you're there. I mean, there's all kinds of different things so that you can still live your life,
Mm-hmm.
and you can get out of debt at the same time. It just, the amount in which you're willing to give up with your lifestyle will determine the timeline of when you get out of debt. I mean, that's basically the formula there. So.
Yeah, and ultimately it's about priorities. So
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to get out of debt so that you can pursue your goals, your dreams. You have
Right.
things that you want to do, and you don't want to have basically this chain holding you back. Because that's
Exactly.
what debt does. I mean, the Bible even calls it a form of slavery. So
That's right.
who
The
who
ball and chain.
yeah, so who wants
Yes.
that? We just kind of something we find ourselves in, and so it's okay now that we're here. It's kind of the "you are here" moment, and
Right.
and
Right.
Yeah, and so, okay, now there's a plan, you followed the plan, but really, I think what I'm hearing you say is it's about knowing where your priorities are. So you're not telling people, give up your date night with your husband because your marriage is important, right? And
Right,
you want to do
right.
things to nurture that. So, but you decide in advance what that is that you're going to do, and you make a space for it, and you kind of say, well, this is what we're going to spend on that. And so if you can get together with your spouse and agree on that, and make a plan, that whole budget really is a plan.
That's exactly right. I refer to it as a map, like a GPS,
Yeah.
and I always use the analogy of the GPS. Like if you tell Siri, I want to go from my home to this point, and Siri gives you directions and you don't follow those directions, you're going to get lost. And so it's the same thing with your money. If you don't tell your money where you want it to go, even though money is an object, it somehow has a mind of its own.
Yeah.
So if you don't tell it where to go, it's going to go wherever, and then you're going to go, I don't know where my money went. And the reason you don't know where your money went is because you didn't tell it where to go in the first place. And that's the most important lesson. People ask me all the time, how did you pay off that amount of money in that amount of time? I said, because we told our money to go pay off the debt, instead of going out to eat or going on trips or doing whatever. We were pretty extreme in that we are, like I said, our boys were about 5 and 4 when we started, and they were just getting into extracurricular activities like t-ball and piano lessons and stuff like that. And we pulled them out of all that stuff to free up money in the budget. And they were mad for like 2 days, and then they got over it, and it was fine. When I run into clients that have older kids that are already like middle school and high school kids that are already established in dance or sports or something like that, I flat out tell them, don't pull your kids out, but maybe your kids could do something to earn part of the money, and you can teach them how that when they work, they get paid, or what else can we cut out of the budget to make up for the fact that your kid is taking dance lessons or whatever. Because when they get to middle school and high school, especially if they've been doing that kind of stuff their whole life, it's really hard to pull them out for a couple of years and then have them get back into it. And that's what I mean when I say, like, I'm not going through somebody's budget with a big red marker and saying, you got to take all this out. I listen to what's important to them. And then we find a way to make the budget work according to the income they have coming in and the activities or lifestyle that they want to be living, especially when it comes to kids. So,
yeah, and you say on your website that money is a tool.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
So, tell us a little bit about that, kind of what, in that context of just life, whether it's pursuing dreams or just basically doing life.
Yeah. So I always, well, I shouldn't say I always, it's just something that I've learned along the way, is that money is the thing that either prevents you from doing something or enables you to do something. So, I hear a lot of times, oh, I wish I could do whatever, but I don't have the money.
Right.
Well, you do have the money. You just have to apply it to that certain thing. You just have to say, okay, well, I want to be able to do this thing, and I need to be able to apply the money to it. So the money as a tool thing sort of came out of a conversation, again, going back to working with clients. And I was asking this particular person how well they liked their job. And they made decent money, but they were kind of like, I don't know, somewhere in the conversation, I just kind of got the feeling that they didn't like it or whatever. But they made good money, and the problem was that they had so much debt, they kind of needed that income, that level of income from the job they had. And they said, well, I don't love my job. I don't exactly hate my job. I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. And my initial reaction was, if you spend a minimum of 40 hours a week at a place, you need to at least really, really like it. Like if you're getting up every day and you're going to this place, and ultimately in the conversation, they said, I would really love to change jobs and I would love to do something else, but the something else that I want to do means that I would be making so much less than what I'm making now. And I can't do that because I have all this debt. And that's again where we get back into the debt being the ball and chain, like the debt being the thing that holds you back from doing what you would love to do. And so my response was then, well, what if we thought about your job as the tool to get you to the place where you could pursue, your dream job or whatever it is that you want to do. And I said, in that, similar to you use a hammer to build a house, or put walls up or whatever, like imagine your income as the hammer, helping you to build the foundation to where you can transfer to doing a different job. And they said, oh, that's like, I still might not love my job, but I could probably reframe my mindset a little bit so that I might enjoy going to work a little more. I said, well, let's try that and see how it works. So a couple of weeks later, followed up with them and they said, you know what? I still don't really, really love my job, but I like it a lot more now knowing that there is an end in sight and that this job is providing the financial resource I need to get out of debt so I don't have to be here anymore. So it's just that little shift in the mindset, of using the money as a tool to be able to build whatever kind of life it is that you want, that you have that ability, I have that ability, anybody has that ability to be able to do that. And sometimes they just need someone like me as a coach to be able to say, well, what if we did it this way? Or what if we shifted a mindset, issue? Or what if we, whatever it is mentally that's holding you back from handling your money better, managing your money better, let's tweak that. Let's fix that part of it. And then let's stay on that track instead of falling back into bad habits, and I love that this, we're doing this interview about the middle of January, and this is the time of year where everybody's falling back into their bad habits, because even though they're bad habits, they're more comfortable than making the changes that are necessary to be able to do that. So my role as a coach is to help people create the plan, but then hold them accountable to that plan for a 30, 60, 90-day period until they really get it and they're going on their own, because change is hard. Change is very hard.
And that's why you need a coach. That's one of the benefits of a coach,
Right. And that's why I'm a coach and not a financial advisor.
Yeah, and that reframing the way we think of things and having the coach is good for helping you be able to do that, because coach is outside of your situation. They've seen other people, and in your case, like you said, been through it yourself, so they can see where you're headed. They can see the tripwires, along the path. You kind of say, hey, watch out here, these types of things, you're going to need to do this, and just like a coach on an athletic team, that's the one. Right. You may have somebody with incredible talents, but they still need that coach to make all the pieces fit together, again, to hold them accountable, all those different things. And so that's a great benefit to that.
Yes. Like I always tell people, I'm a football fanatic. So I always tell people, even a professional quarterback at the NFL level has a quarterback's coach. Yep. They're getting paid millions of dollars to be a quarterback for their team. A lot of the times they're the first, second, third round draft pick, which means that they're the elite of the elite, top of their class, all that, but they still have a quarterback's coach, And so, so that's so people might be, really great with money because I work with both ends of the spectrum. I work with people that have really hit their rock bottom of debt, and their budget is always in a negative balance, and we have to figure out how to fix that. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I have people that come to me that say, you know what, I pay all my bills, I have savings, I just can't figure out how to do this one thing or what, and so we just work on that one thing. And a lot of times, I might just say something in conversation, or I might just be able to pull from my own experience and say, well, have you tried this? And they go, oh, I never thought of that before. Because again, I don't have any emotion that's tied to the whole financial management piece. And because of that, I'm able to look at things from a different angle and a different perspective.
Yeah, and that can be extremely helpful. So I'm just going to shift gears a little bit. Your book, which is called Building My Yellow Brick Road, Life Lessons from Pursuing a Dream, that released, at the end of July of last year?
Yes, officially August 1st, but
Okay.
I launched it at the Launch Out conference, and then the official release was August 1st.
All right. Tell us a little bit about that and where people can find that.
So this was again a project that, I never imagined myself to be an author. But years ago I just started a Word document of concert stories for my boys, because all they've ever known is mom goes to see Elton John in concert, and then I come home and I'm really excited, and all that, and have all these great epic stories to tell. And I was talking to someone one day and they said, you should write a book. And I'm like, I don't want to write a book. Like, what do I know about writing a book? I'm not a writer. I'm not an author. I have no idea how to do the whole process. And interestingly enough, I spoke at the Launch Out conference in Atlanta, and in coming up with the proposal to do the speech and to do the talk, I was kind of trying to figure out what to do. And at that point, I was writing what would become one of the chapters in the book, but I didn't know it at the time. And as I was just documenting this concert story, I thought, this would be good speech material, and I could kind of tweak it to fit the Launch Out parameters and inspire people to go out and pursue their dream and whatnot. And when I was done with the speech, several people came up to me and they were like, that was awesome. Do you have more stories like that? I was like, well, yes. And at that point in time, because that was a couple years ago, so I've been to 38 Elton John concerts altogether up to this point. So I don't know, maybe I was in like the 32, 33 concerts at that particular Launch Out conference. And I was like, well, yeah, I've been to 32, 33 Elton John concerts. Like, I have a whole thing of them, and it was at that Launch Out conference that the seed was sort of planted that I might have a book, in all of these concert stories. And so when I got home, and the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I should write a book. Like, I hadn't intended to write the book, but I thought, people might buy it, they might not buy it, but it would be kind of cool, instead of just all these stories being in a Word document, if I would put a book together for the boys, that would be kind of cool. So the book started out as just a collection of concert stories, but as I got to talking to people about the book, and as I hired the editor, and we kind of went through the whole process, the point was brought to my attention that not everyone wants to buy a book of Elton John concert stories. Like, maybe it could be a little more. But we didn't really know what that little more was going to be, except that as I was writing the book and doing research and whatnot, and, reading articles about, books should be a minimum of like 35,000 to 40,000 to 45,000 words. And I'm like, well, I don't have enough words. Like, I don't have enough to put together a book, But it turns out that if I tell Elton John concert stories along with my own personal life journey of getting into debt and getting out of debt, and how this dream kind of, how this dream of mine to meet Elton John sort of started and write, it ends up being a memoir. And if I write it in that aspect, then it turns out I have 45,000 words to put in a book. And so the book is not just a collection of concert stories. It is it is written as a memoir. It starts when I was in middle school, and it ends at one of the last batches of concerts that I did, where I went to see Elton John. I went to 4 concerts in 6 days. And so the book ends with that last batch of concerts, because at some point in time I have to end the book so it can get edited and get, because that's the thing about the book writing process, is that if I knew I wanted to launch the book at Launch Out, and launch out was in July, which meant the book really had to be done in April, so that we had time to edit it and get it printed and all that. And there's a lot of back end stuff that is involved in getting a book written and edited and published and all that stuff. So then the speech that I gave at launch out, because of the launch out parameters, I had to kind of leave the audience with some action steps. And so that's where the life lesson became, because my action steps became life lessons. And so I decided when I was writing the book that at the end of each chapter, I would put 1 or 2 or 3 life lessons that I learned from that particular story. And then how I applied those life lessons to other areas of my life. And so as you're reading like chapters 1 through 5, there might be a life lesson in there that shows up again in chapters like 15 through 20, because I say, you remember when I told you about this life lesson? Well, I remembered that lesson and I applied it to this, and this is where it got me, So one of my friends who read the book, she does a lot of reading of personal development books, and she said it was one of the best books on personal development that she had ever read. And I asked her, I said, well, I didn't write it as a personal development book, so that's very interesting to me. And she said, no, she said, because people can take the book and they can read your story, read the life lessons, and apply those life lessons. Like, you have given them a do this kind of action step, sort kind of thing. And it's been very interesting to me how the feedback I've gotten from the book, that everybody reads the same book, but no 2 people have said the same thing about it. So that's been kind of a cool experience for me.
So that's part of the experience as an author is how are people experiencing your story, and they do it often in ways that you never thought about.
That's right. Yes, that's right.
Let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned the work of the editor and suggestions that you received along the way, because one of the things that I hear people say sometimes when they're thinking about writing a book is, well, I can't afford an editor, or they want to skip the editor in that process. How did an editor make your book better?
Well, first of all, I had my choice of editors. And to me, it was important to choose someone who connected with my story and who was excited about my story, and not just someone who wanted to read my book to get a paycheck. So I needed to have somebody that was as involved in my story, so to speak, as I was, so that they could really be excited about it and be, and not just, like I said, not just read to get a paycheck. And so the number one piece of advice is, I would say, when we renovated our kitchen a few years ago, when we Googled how to renovate a kitchen, the number one piece of advice on every single website I went to was hire a kitchen designer. Do not do this project without hiring a designer. So the same thing goes with the book. Do not write a book unless you have an editor. It's like number one thing to do that. And the editing process is a process, which means the payments are a process, right? You're not giving somebody an entire chunk of money up front in order for them to do the project. You're paying them as certain steps are completed in the process. And for me, again, it was, we're debt free, so we have money to, that's freed up, so to speak, that we can say, okay, well, we were putting this money towards this project, but now I'm writing a book, so we're going to put the money towards the editing project and, and whatnot. But also my business makes income. And so my business income was able to pay for the editing process. And I also ended up hiring a marketing person, and the marketing person is very important. But if you had to choose between the two, I would say definitely the editor is a must-have to write a book. And what I gave my editor and what ended up being published in the book are 2 entirely different documents. So it's important for people to not, because I had this same problem. Like, I was like, what am I going to give the editor, and what is she going to say about it, and what is she going to, and I kind of went into it where I wanted to write the book, But if the editor gave it back to me and said, this is complete garbage, do not publish this book, I would have been like, okay, that's fine, because really this is just for my boys. It's not really, like, I never really intended to write the book in the first place. Right. But all I did was write. And I didn't really worry so much about grammar and spelling and punctuation and making sure things were in the right places. And what the editor did was she took the manuscript and she gave me notes back, like, you have a huge gap of time from this paragraph to this paragraph. What happened in between? Mm-hmm. Because I know what happened in between, but my reader doesn't know what happened in between, and it doesn't make any sense. And so then I would have to go back and go, oh, now that you point that out to me, I see where somebody could get lost in the transition there. Right. And then also writing in sequential order. And the reason that you hire an editor is also for that purpose, to say, okay, well, you have chapter 3, but chapter 3 should really be chapter 5, and chapter 5 should really be chapter 10, and you need to go back and fill in these gaps, and and just really put everything together so that my book is a story. It's not disjointed. It's not everybody that's read it has said it's a very easy read. It's like it's a rainy afternoon type of book, where if you have 4 or 5 hours, you could sit down and knock it out in one sitting if you wanted to. And that's what the editor did in that process, is she helped make it that continuous flow, along with, fixing all the grammar and and the spelling and the sentence structure and all that stuff that goes along with that process. So the editing is definitely a very valuable piece of writing the book. And paying for it is just something that, again, I want to write a book, but I don't have the money. Well, that's an excuse. It's not a reason, because if you really wanted to write a book and you really wanted to hire an editor, you would contact an editor, find out how much they cost, and then put book editor as a line item in the budget and figure out how to pay for it.
Yeah, there you go. And that's what we're talking about today, is that making the changes that you need to make to tell your story, to pursue your dream, to go out, whether it's going on a missions trip or writing the book or making a job switch or just having an experience like going to a concert or vacation or taking your kids someplace special, whatever that is, it's looking at it objectively. And you may need to get somebody to come alongside, like a coach, a good friend that you can trust to hold you accountable. And it's worth the money to pay those people. And really, like, the editor almost acts like you could have like a separate coach and an editor, but they're the one that leads you through. This is ground they've traveled before.
Right.
In a similar fashion to what you do with people.
Yep. And to make sure that I'm doing what I need to do. So there are deadlines that are involved in writing a book, and the editor's job is to, give the manuscript back to me and say, these edits need to be made. And I'm the only one that can make them because I'm the author. It's not like I can pass that off to somebody else. And then following up and saying, your deadline is in a week. How are you doing on those book edits? And just really holding me accountable and making sure that things get done by the deadline so that the book can get published and things can get done in the timely manner.
Melissa, I think our time is about done, but I really appreciate you coming, being on the show this week.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, enjoyed talking to you. And will I see you at Launch Out?
I think so. That's on the calendar. So that's the plan.
All right. So this has been the Your Voice podcast. Find your voice, tell your story, change the world.